Hello friends, welcome to my channel Soulful Spinning. My name is Lisa and I'm coming to you from Chicago, right outside the suburbs of Chicago in the US. Welcome back to my channel. This is my channel where I document my creative journeys with fiber, mainly knitting and spinning. So I feel like there's an inner artist in me trying to get out, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in today's episode. So welcome back to returning viewers and welcome to any new viewers. We're going to get close to 10,000 subscribers pretty soon. So I'm putting together a little giveaway package that I'll talk about in the next episode. So if you're interested in a possible giveaway, don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you're enjoying it. So before I get started in today's video, I wanted to thank everyone who gave me really good suggestions over the last couple of weeks on how to manage multiple projects going at once. Lots of very thoughtful suggestions, and I really feel like I'm having a conversation with a lot of you, and I do appreciate it so much. So yeah, my dog just came down to check out what's going on here. So, you know, in terms of managing works in progress, I got a lot of really good suggestions, and if you are interested, it's fun to go back and read those comments because a lot of people gave a lot of really good suggestions. But one of the things that kept coming up was to limit the number of projects that you have going. So I think one viewer said, you know, she has kind of a mindless project she can do when she's, you know, waiting for a kid's soccer game or watching TV. And then she has another project that's maybe involves a little bit more mental attention. And then usually like a smaller project. So I was thinking about that. So this week I finished actually, I have a finished object. I finished a pair of mittens this week. I pulled out my longest standing whip, and I'm going to finish that first because that's the closest to being done. So that was the other thing that came up a lot, was that if you have a lot of works in progress and you still want to make that object, go ahead and do the one that's closest to completion, and then that gives you motivation to go on to the next thing. So yeah, so thank you so much for all of your suggestions. And the other thing that came up in the last episode was regards to combed top, and how often when you get a commercially prepared preparation for a specific breed, it's difficult to see the characteristics of the fiber. So many of my viewers suggested that I steam the fiber. So, you know, put it over a tea kettle or even put it in a steam basket, being careful not to felt, of course. And then that might bring back to life the crimp structure of the lock, and then, you know, you get a better idea of what you're dealing with. So thank you so much for those suggestions, and please keep them coming. I do really feel like I'm getting to know you through the comments, and we're really engaging in a real conversation. So keep those comments going. In today's episode, we're going to talk about a finished object. I'm still not done with my Lopapeysa. If you've been here before, you know I've been working on a Lopapeysa sweater. I had to sort of put that aside so I could work on my breed study for the week. The sheep of the week is North Ronaldsy. So we're moving from the hill breeds, the down breeds of Wales and England, and now we're working into the Scandinavian breeds, the European short-tailed family. And so the first one I'm going to talk about is North Ronaldsy this week. And then upcoming in later episodes, we're going to talk about Finn, Shetland, and Icelandic. And I do have some Manx Lochtan in my stash. I might pull that out as well because that's part of that family. So a little bit more on that in just a moment when I get into the breed study. Yeah, so the breed study, a couple of updates on my projects, and then at the end I want to share with you, I got a couple of new spindles in the mail. They were a long time coming, and I wanted to show you them. And one of them is made out of a really special wood. I know, I geek out on wood just like I geek out on different kinds of fiber, but the spindle's made out of bog oak. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the specialness of that wood and what it means to me to be able to spin with a spindle made out of it. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. So let's do the breed study first. So North Ronaldsy is our first breed. took some notes here. First of all, the Northern European short-tailed family, and what I'll do is, with every family, is I just make a really sloppy concept map. The Northern European short-tailed family consists of Boré, Castle Milk Morit, Finn Sheep, Gotland, Hebridean, Icelandic, Manx Lochten, Soy. I think I have a small sample of soy in my stash somewhere, but I can't find it. A very kind viewer sent some to me a couple years ago. I'm going to look for that. Shetland, Romanov, Wisant, and of course North Ronaldsy, which I'm talking about today. So overall, the European short-tailed family originated in the northern latitudes of Scandinavia, islands in the North Atlantic, and throughout northern Russia. True to their name, they have short tails. Many of this family have dual coats. So, for example, the Icelandic sheep have a longer outer coat that is very water repellent, and then they have the short downy fibers inside the thell, which is the soft insulating fibers. And some of the Shetlands are like that, and I think some of the other breeds as well. So they have a kind of a coarser, hairier outer coat and then a fine downy inner coat. North Ronaldsy, I believe, is one of those. These little sheep live on seaweed on the beaches of North Ronaldsy, which is a tiny island of 9 square miles in the Orkney Islands, and they're the cutest things. So, but I'll get into that in just a second. They come in a variety of colors, so that's something that you'll see in these breeds. You'll see ranges of browns and blacks and grays and everything in between, white. They're very, very diverse and fascinating to work with. If you've never worked with one of these breeds, I highly recommend it. I probably start out with Shetland wool and then maybe move on to one of the others. So the North Ronaldsy, they live on a 2.7 square miles or a 7-kilometer island in the north of Scotland. And in 1832, a 13-mile long, 6-foot or 1.8 meter dry stone wall was built along the sea shore because there was limited arable land, and they wanted to restrict these little sheep from grazing on the green. So they basically put them on the beach, and then they built this wall to keep them on the side of the beach. And so they have evolved to live on seaweed and to eke out a life just on very meager rations. They're a very ancient breed. They probably date back to 3000 BC, and they're one of the most ancient breeds, which sort of ties in with my other thing I want to talk about today, and that's the bog oak, which is very old ancient wood. They're pretty small animals. They're very hardy. I think they're horned. I think most of them have horns, but some of them could be polled. So polled means they don't have horns, and then, of course, horns mean they have horns. Their staple length is 2 to 4 inches. Their fleece weight is 2 to 2.5 pounds. But I read that if you get a North Ronaldsy fleece, it'll often have a lot of sand in it because they live on the beach. The micron ranges from 23 to 28. The locks are triangular. They come in a full range of colors, white to blacks and browns. So that's a little bit about the North Ronaldsy. So one of my sources that I often go to for my first research is I go to the Fleece and Fiber Source Book. The authors have a very good overview of the different breeds and then where they're located. And you know, this is just such a fun book just to have out and read like a coffee table book. And I've gone to it again and again, so I'm really glad that I actually own the book and I don't have to rent it from the library. I'm going to stop the video real quick and turn down the radiator because I just heard that it went on, and I don't want you to have that humming. Okay, I'm going to try not to edit too much because last week I was so scattered in my thoughts. I had to edit, and it took way too many hours. And I know you guys don't care if I make mistakes. You guys are the kindest, best people in the world. I have to say, I have the best viewers. So, well, what was I saying? So a lot of the information that I got from about the sheep came from this. And here's the picture that they have in the Fleece and Fiber source book. So I also found a really interesting article that I will link below. Let me turn off my phone here too. I sent it to myself. So this is an article from a website called Historic UK, the History and Heritage Accommodation Guide. And they have an article about the seaweed-eating sheep of North Ronaldsy. And I thought I would just read you a little bit from the article. And I'll go ahead and link the article in the description box. And as usual, everything I talk about, I post links in the description. So just go down there to link to any patterns or makers that I refer to. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to read you a little bit of the article because I found it really, really engaging and very interesting. The Seaweed-Eating Sheep of North Ronaldsy by Terry McEwen. On a remote Scottish island called North Ronaldsy, off the northern coast of Orkney, high up in the North Sea, is a peculiar stone dike which encircles the entire 3-mile-long island. This dike was built in 1831 because of a peculiar and rare breed of sheep, the North Ronaldsy. The dike is 13 miles long and 6 feet high, and separates the interior of the island from the beach all the way around. Its purpose? To protect the inner island from ravenous marauders, in this case the sheep. The North Ronaldsy sheep are without doubt the rarest and most unusual in the United Kingdom. Not only that, they are also a living link that stretches over 5,000 years into Orkney's past. So the author goes on to say the North Ronaldsy is so far north that it is actually higher in the northern hemisphere than the southernmost tip of Sweden. There are only about 50 people that live on the island today, down from about 500 in the mid-19th century. So they built this dike in the 1800s to prevent the existing sheep from overgrazing inland, decimating their crops and potentially ruining the local economy. And the laird at the time felt that grazing cattle were more profitable. Therefore, the sheep were consequently confined to the beach. This wasn't a problem for these wee beasts. They call hardy wee beasts that they soon adapted to their new surroundings and their new diet. So their diet consists of 80% seaweed, which is incredibly rare for a mammal. Scientific studies of the breed's ancestors show that the seaweed contributed to their diet as early as 5,000 years ago. They're part of the northern European short-tailed variety. They most likely arrived in Orkney thousands of years ago from the Caspian through the Baltic and then Sweden and Norway. And there were bones found at Skarabrae from the current breed's ancestors, which dated back some 5,000 years, showing just how long these sheep have called Orkney their home. So any attempts at crossbreeding the sheep to, improve, so when people try to improve a breed, they introduce other bloodlines to try to maybe get a bigger carcass or better wool. It never works out. The crossbreeds don't thrive and they don't succeed. So they're very much as they always were, which I think is really super cool. So another side note here, I guess, is the red seaweed that they like is supposedly used as a medicine and is considered a cure from everything from scurvy to hangovers. So they eat the seaweed at low tide, then escape further up the beach to ruminate during high tide. They said they're pretty feisty, they're stubborn. They are central to the island's economy for their wool and meat. I guess they taste good, that's according to the article. Though I don't know, I don't have a hard time eating in North Ronaldsy sheep. So yeah, what else does the article say? That they've been facing some difficulty. I guess the dike that keeps them separated from the island has fallen into, it needs repairs constantly. So, but I guess because they're on the conservation watch list and they're like a national treasure, there is a dedicated warden and people that are keeping the dike intact so that these animals can continue to thrive on the island. The article said that they do take the sheep off the beach for lambing, But they have to be careful not to give them too rich of a diet in grass and so on, because they just don't do very well. They've been so specialized, which just blows my mind, that they live on this little spit of an island. And I have some of their fiber right here. So, yeah, so I hopefully I've posted some different photos as I was reading here. What else? The females are kept inland from April through August for lambing. And there are only around 3,000 of these animals left. So this was, this article was written, I don't know, fairly recently, I imagine. So, let's see what else. They're rare. Oh yeah, here it says they're listed as vulnerable by the Rare Breeds Survival Trust, which set up protect in Britain's indigenous and primitive species. And so they have a dedicated warden to take care of them. And wow, wouldn't it be cool to go actually see these little sheep? So, what about me? What have I done with North Ronaldsy? So, I bought a sample pack from a seller on Etsy called Hearthside Fibers, and one of the samples was North Ronaldsy. But I was so interested in spinning it, I ordered an extra 100 grams, and so I'll show you what the fiber looks up close. Whoops, there goes my other breeds. So here's the card, a little information. And this is the sample. I came in this bump of pin drafted roving, and it is lovely, lovely, lovely. So it's dual coated, but most of this, I imagine, is the undercoat because it is so super, super soft to the hand. And I think you can see that there are some black fibers in there. And then I also found some shorter, kempier fibers. So I think kemp is like just these little tiny, stiff, little white, I know you probably can't see that, little white fibers. A lot of texture, but look how open and beautiful this roving is. It's just super soft. It's so soft, you guys. Like I think probably the undercoat's like cashmere almost. But you see, you have a little bit of the guard hairs still in there, so you're going to get a little bit of prickle, I think. So I have this, and then this was the sample. They must have pulled it off the bump, and this is just the sample that came out of the little bag. It did really, really puff up. Quite a bit. I mean, it was in this tiny little bag, and it just like push, you know. So it does have a lot of volume once it gets exposed to the air and so forth. So yeah. So what did I do with this? I spun this mostly on my support spindles, a couple of my support spindles, because I was finding that when I spun it on with a drop spindle, some of the fibers were so super short. Let me pull out a lock for you. Here, I'm just going to pull a piece here. So here's a piece of the fiber. Now, you see, so I'm going to pull out, see how short that is. This is really probably about 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches, some shorter even. And so what was happening is when I was spinning it with my drop spindle, as the spindle filled up, it was just a little too heavy. So I switched over to a couple of my support spindles. So let me show you which ones I used. So these are the two spindles that I used. I have some video here of me spinning this wool. And I'm working on my support spinning technique. I'm not super proficient. Hello. Stop crooked. So it's, what's today? Today's Wednesday. So by Wednesday, I usually have my singles already spun up and plied so I can wash the skein, so that Thursday I can knit my square. So I wanted to give you a progress update on my North Ronaldsy. Just testing this out here. This is the bump I bought. Yeah, so far what I've spun up a couple of cops worth. This is called a cop, I think, or a cob. I should look that up. So this is what I had spun up from the bump. And now I've got another spindle full here. This is one of my Kravelli spindles. And this one is from the spindle shop in Australia. This is a wonderful spinner. And then I also have, where is it here? It's so little that I'm liable to I'm liable to lose it. So this is my new spindle. Here. So this is a little teeny tiny Turk. It's just this tiny little thing. It just came in the mail yesterday. And I had ordered this, I want to say on the 5th of December, and it was shipped shortly thereafter, and I just got it yesterday, which I think was the 16th of January. But like I said, I think I said in another video that I've never not gotten a spindle from the UK when I've ordered them, but sometimes they do take quite a bit of time. So this one's from Ian at ISTCrafts. And he makes wonderful spindles. I guess he was according to his bio, he was a instrument maker, like a luthier, I think it's called, like violins. And so he's a really master craftsman. So this is my little teeny tiny, so small. This is actually made out of, what is this made out of? This is made out of bog oak. So what is bog oak? It's material from trees that have been buried in peat bogs and preserved from decay by the acidic and anaerobic bog conditions, sometimes for hundreds or even thousands of years. The wood is usually stained brown by tannins dissolved in the acidic water. Bogwood represents the early stages in the fossilization of wood, which further stages ultimately forming jet, lignite, and coal over a period of many million years. So this is, I have another spindle that's made out of bog oak that I will show you in just a little bit. And what does Ian say on his website? I think I bought this from Etsy, but he also has a shop called ISTCrafts, and again, I'll link all the shops below. It says English bog oak Turkish spindle, carbon dated to circa 3,300 BC. It's 60 millimeters, cross arms, bog oak with brass weights. So in all of his Turkish spindles now, Ian's putting these little brass weights in the ends, which gives it a lot more momentum and spins a lot longer. But even the ones that don't have those little weights also spin beautifully. Bog oak, 115 millimeter tapered with end ring notch weighing 10 grams. Sealed with acrylic sand or seal and cut back. And then finished beautifully. So I am enjoying this spindle for this yarn because the staple length is so thin, or so short, that it's there's no weight at the end, really, hardly any weight at all. So cute. Oh my gosh, this is so cute, so stinking cute. Yes, let me just get this wound up on here. So this was one of two spindles that I bought. The other one I haven't even opened yet. It's right here. It came in this little, two spindles came in this little tiny mailer. Now this one is, let's see, back here. So this is Santos Rosewood. And this one's 11 grams. Let me put it together. So here are the two. Here, I'm going to show you here. So here are the two cross members here. And you just kind of put them together. They fit like that perfectly. And then you put your stick in the middle. So there it is. There's my little tiny Turk. Here's my North Ronaldsy. This is roving, pin drafted roving. A little bit smushed in the bag. Let's fluff it up. Like a pale, pale gray. Most people, when they spin supported, they usually use their right hand to flick and then they draft with their left, which I can do, but not quite as comfortable for me, so my hands feel fine. They don't get tired or anything. Yeah, so just kind of leave it sit there in between my legs and spin while I'm watching TV. We've been watching, what have we been watching? We've been watching the new Jack Ryan show. And then of course we've been binge watching Better Call Saul. We have watched all of Breaking Bad, or I saw most of it. I had to leave the room many times. So yeah, we're watching, we just watch TV or a movie. I can just sit and it's a very comfortable way of spinning while you're watching TV or watching a podcast or something. There's my support here. You have a bird's eye view here. My pretty girl. Sound. Like that sound. Yeah, draft slower, faster, I mean. Yeah. I think I could learn how to do it this way. So that's North Ronaldsy. So have you ever spun it? I'm really enjoying the fiber. I think it would be great for a lot of purposes. I'm thinking socks. Maybe not the heels and the toes, the hard wearing sections, but I think it would make a beautiful sock yarn. It's soft, but it's sturdy as well. All right, I want to quick give you an update on my sweater here, my Lopapeysa jumper, which I talked about last week. So here is my, I hope the sound is okay. My microphone died, so I'm just using the microphone and the camera. So here's my jumper. This is Lurifax Frost by Trude Benstop, and I'm well into the color work section. I was hoping I would have this done to show you this week, but alas, it was not meant to be. But next week I'll definitely have this done. Famous last words, right? So I thought I'd give you an update there. Knitting it on a 4.5 millimeter needle. The gauge is 14 stitches per 10 centimeters. And I'm using the same needle size for the color work. So we'll see how that works out. Hopefully the yoke won't be too tight. I'm making a really good effort of spreading out the stitches as I carry my float so their floats aren't too tight. So that's the main project I've been working on, and then I finished my mittens. So here are my Mummer's mitts by the ladies at Saltwater Mittens book. These are made out of my hand spun. They're made out of Romney and Shetland wool. So the gray is Romney that I processed from fleece, and then the oatmeal is a farm roving that I bought from a shepherd. So yeah, I'm really happy with these. Already thinking about my next project out of their book. I think I'm going to make a pair of vamps, which they call, it sounds vamp, but vamps in Newfoundland are slipper socks. So I'm going to find some yarn out of my stash and make it a pair of slippers, colorwork slippers, I think, from that book. All right, so the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is a couple of new things that came my way this week. Let me see if I can find them. So I am a huge fan of ISTCrafts. The maker there is Ian Waite, I believe, from the Isle. I think that's his name. I'll put his name and contact information here. So this is a little spindle made out of bog oak. And bog oak is oak that's been buried in peat bogs for hundreds to thousands of years. So this particular bog oak, he says, was carbon dated to 3300 BC, which I think is really amazing. It's a highly sought after wood. A couple of things about bog oak. It was often used in tobacco pipes, so pipe making, furniture, I guess in Venetian palaces, and I guess the throne of Peter the Great was made out of bog oak, and it's a highly sought commodity. And so he has been working with this. I have 3 pieces from him made out of this wood. The wood is also used to make the Scottish dirks, which are those knives that the Highlanders would have in their, I think they'd have them in their hose, wouldn't they, in their socks? So really cool wood. It's called a teeny tiny Turk, and it's all of 11 grams. And it's super fast. Yeah, it's like a little bird, like a little blackbird. Not quite as long spinning as some of my bigger spindles, but of course it's just a little guy. So I'm just doing sort of a long draw here. Isn't that cute? So I also have this guy's big sister. I pulled this one out of my stash here. So let's look at for comparison. So tiny spindles, very fine yarn, and then a thicker, heavier spindle for a thicker single. So for this one, I'm spinning just some miscellaneous roving I had in my stash. And this is a slower moving spindle, and it's great for thicker singles and for plying. So 2 treasures that I have made out of this ancient wood, which I think is really neat, because this week I was working on Ronaldsy, which goes, dates back to 3000 BC, and I'm working with wood that's the same age, which is really cool. So yeah, and I have one other piece that he made for me out of bog oak. And no, this is not a Harry Potter wand. This is a Russian style spindle. And it's made out of bog oak with a lignum tip here, which is a really super hard wood. And so this one spins really fast. Very fast, and not as long as a spindle that has more, like this, that has more weight at the bottom. So this is really good for silk, cashmere, for very short, fine fibers. So yeah, so I'm teaching myself how to draft with my other hand, because if you've seen me before, you know that I typically hold my fiber in my right hand. So this is just a little bit of Polworth silk. And so if you like to spin really fine thread for like cobweb weight, you could definitely do it on a Russian spindle. I don't knit that much with very fine yarn, so I would probably have to do multiple plies. But yeah, I pulled this out of my support spindle box. Thought that you get a kick about seeing these woods out of bog oak. So yeah, so the only other thing that's been going on this week is I pulled out all of my watercolors. So I'm kind of an artist wannabe. I really don't have any talent. I just like to play with color and paint. So I received something in the mail this week. I received the Field Guide to Color by Lisa Solomon and the Color Meditation Deck by the same author. And on the back, play with paint, get creative with color, and discover your personal palette in this colorful journal of creativity and self-discovery. So I'm all on board with that. Low stress. You don't have to be good at everything you try. You can do things just for the fun of it. I tend to be very project oriented and put pressures on myself to be the best I can be and get things done in a timely manner, etc. But yeah, I have time on my hands, so I purchased this. This little meditation deck just has these little prompts to have a play, like make some squares, or do concentric shapes. So, in the process of playing with the paint, you learn how the paint works, and then you also learn how the colors all mix up. And so we have this shop here in the States called Dick Blick's, and Dick Blick's is this art supply house. And since most of my watercolor paints were all dried up and everything from years ago, I had them saved, but they were all dried out. I purchased this set right here. This is a set of watercolor paints from Sennelier. They have really, really good prices on Dick Blick, so I got it for a nice discount. And I pulled out my brushes, which are here, and I pulled out some paper, and I just had a play yesterday. So I made a little swatch of all the colors. Thought you might get a kick look at the colors. Aren't they pretty? So these are all the Sennelier colors that are in the palette. And as you see, I was just goofing around with the colors. So I love that these roses here remind me of the vermilion shade that's in my watercolor palette. And then these are eucalyptus leaves here with them. So yeah, I've done a little bit of yarn dyeing, but not too much. But I'm thinking maybe just playing with watercolor will give me some insight into how colors work and what colors make my heart sing, etc. So yeah, new foray. As many of you know, I'm retired now. I don't have a regular job, and I'm keeping plenty busy. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I do feel like I'm visiting with a friend when I put out a podcast and I hear from you. I feel like I have the best viewers, the kindest people, so many lovely suggestions and support and encouragement. And I feel the love, and we love you right back. And right, don't we, Peaches? And we hope you're well. We hope you have a good week. And I'll see you next time when I revisit Shetland wool and hopefully have a finished sweater. So thank you, friends, for tuning in, and we'll talk to you very soon. Bye for now.